Hi there, wormies. Do you ever feel that you don't fit into the neurotypical world, but neither are you neurodivergent enough in all the right ways to fit into that world either? Then Autism in Heels by Jennifer Cooke O'Toole is the book for you. Welcome to my channel. You've come to the right place to be your authentic, weird, and wormy self. I'm Hannah. I have autism and ADHD, and I make weekly videos rating the representation of neurodiversity in the media so you can make an informed decision on what to read or watch. Hit that like and subscribe button to join the neurodiverse bookworm family so you don't miss out on my latest recommendation. Women and girls on the spectrum are so often missed because most of the research has historically been done on little white boys. And Jennifer, the author of Autism in Heels, was no exception. She wasn't diagnosed until she was 35 years old, after her kids were diagnosed, and then her husband. And in researching this to find solutions for them and compiling all the information she learned in a way that only an autistic person could do, researching it to the nth degree, she began to wonder if she herself wasn't on the spectrum. And the more she thought about it, the more she was sure. And finally, at 35 years old, she was diagnosed. Then she began to see the connections in her own family, how her father was most likely autistic as well. And autism has at least an 80% heritability rate. So it's very likely that if you have autistic family members, you are also autistic. It's not a guarantee, but there's a high probability. Jennifer Cooke O'Toole has consulted on several TV shows, such as Netflix's Love on the Spectrum, and also given hundreds of talks around the world about what life is like as an autistic female, to empower other autistic women to find their voice. She writes Autism in Heels to share her journey. She says, "It took 34 years to reframe my life, to find the relief of identification. That's such a long time when lived 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. I made it to 35, not without scratches or bruises. But still, I made it. Some of us simply can't hold out that long, nor should we have to. Every one of us deserves more than a life repaired in retrospect. We deserve full lives, on the human spectrum, right now. I am most definitely still learning how to hear my own voice, but I have learned how to tell my own truth. Along this modeled journey, I have fallen many times, and every time I've gotten back up on my feet. Not always gracefully and not always quickly, but I have gotten up, and I am proud of the scars I bear because they are proof that I am stronger than whatever or whoever has wounded me. Today I choose to keep dancing, to turn my stumbles into part of the routine, because I'm making this up as I go along. I will do my best to unzip time for you, to share my yesterdays and illuminate someone else's tomorrow, hopeful that I may be brave and broken, and that this world has room for an imperfect, atypical heroine." This book does not alienate neurotypicals, as some have done in the neurodiversity community, but neither does it give autistics an excuse for bad behavior. In fact, it encourages us to follow the two most important lessons her mother taught her. One, when life knocks you down, find a way to lift others up. Two, why not you? And despite the heartache and hardships she has suffered, she doesn't make it all about herself and getting her rights and stepping over others, punishing them for what has been done to her. No, she tries to make it about others, make sense of her world by making her story the path for others to find themselves. And I think that's quite beautiful and unselfish. When we're focused on helping others, then it's harder to focus on our own problems and get so wrapped up into it that we can't see a way out. And in fact, one of the things they recommend to people who are depressed is to find a purpose. You may not feel like it, but go out and find at least one person or some being that you can help and make their world just a little bit better. And in doing so, you're going to find that your world is brightened. Jennifer shares stories of her own social blunders and analyzes them to help other autistics understand their own experiences and how they could avoid making the same mistakes she has made. She talks about not having the words to describe how she was feeling and feeling so terribly misunderstood, like she was a great bother. My mom didn't really understand me. She often doesn't. And that can alternatively make her feel overwhelmed, proud, afraid, or embarrassed. But I can assure you, she never believed I was unnecessary or unlovable. Not ever. The thing is, I believed those things. I believed that she believed them. And I would have given anything on earth to know how to be the super smart, precocious redhead who made my mommy smile, yet didn't wear out my welcome before I even realized it. More than 30 years later, I look back on us both with compassion and even some degree of regret. A 6-year-old lunchtime existentialist is charming in theory, but exhausting in daily life. Even now, as an adult, I know there are few people with whom I can sync up intellectually and emotionally. Everyone else prefers small doses. So I've learned to quickly tuck up the deep stuff, bring in the small talk, and smile. And that is so frustrating. I've experienced that a lot myself, being too much for other people and having to dial down my intensity so that I don't blow people over. My mother told me that I was like a bull in a china shop so many times when I was a kid. Not only did Jennifer not have the words she needed to describe her own feelings and that she felt so misunderstood, she herself misunderstood others' intentions. For example, one of the things that led to her feeling rejected by her mother, who never did reject her in actuality, was her mother would tell her, just go and play, when they would go to the pool. And Jennifer didn't know how to communicate to her mother all of the sensory issues and the issues that she was having playing with the other kids. And so she would just want to hang out with her mother and her mother's friends because that was the safest place. But of course, her mother wanted Jennifer to enjoy herself, and her mother wanted some time to herself also. And being told to just go and play felt like such a big rejection to poor little Jennifer, who didn't know how to understand other people's intentions. And I really understand her too. I have felt so lonely and rejected a lot of my life. And the more I think of it, I believe that it's mostly my perception of things rather than my reality. But when you feel the crushing weight of loneliness like a big elephant sitting on your chest in the moment, it doesn't really help. And I know it's difficult for us to connect with other people and other people to connect with us. That's one of the biggest challenges about autism. And the interesting thing is that we both took comfort during these moments from Psalm 27, which has a verse in it that says, "When my father and my mother forsake me, then the Lord will take me up." And the Lord invites us to seek his face, and he will be found of us. She says, speaking of reading about Laura Ingalls Wilder, at age 12, Laura's artifacts even offered me her favorite scripture verses found beside her bed in a handwritten journal upon her death. It seemed to me that through these private notes, my distant friend was actually reaching out to help me. Psalm 27, she wrote, was one of her favorites when she was alone. It spoke of being kept safe from enemies who surround and attack, of feeling special, not condemned, of being protected and loved. It was as if, very much alive somewhere in time, Laura knew I needed her. Autism is so incredibly isolating because we're playing at the game of life without a copy of the rules. And almost universally, the result is complex post-traumatic stress disorder, a normal psychological response to abnormal chronic circumstances. We develop anxiety that feels ridiculous, hypervigilant, tedious, and exhausting to everyone around us, but in all fairness, it is entirely informed and relevant and natural. We have not the social armory to bolster our hearts, to understand our bewilderment. We have not the sophistication or flexible perspective to judge or imagine a world in which our experiences are validated, much less valuable. Therefore, we fully expect to be undercut, undermined, abandoned, ridiculed, and traumatized. And more often than not, we are right. She talks about lashing out angrily at people who try to get close to her because it is easier to be the one who puts up the walls so that you don't get hurt anymore. But yet, underneath that, there is someone who is yearning to be seen, to be understood beyond the outward behavior for who they really are at the heart. We may lash in slanted, cutting ways that really mean, you hurt me deeply here in a way that hurt me on a bigger, lifelong, thematic way. I'm mad at you for that. I don't want to hurt. I don't want you to be the one who hurts me. And I feel really bad about me and I need help. Please don't get scared off. Please be strong enough to find me in the hurting. We are most fragile when we are sharpest, vulnerably angry, hopefully angry, and looking to please too. We live in the dance space in between. I truly relate to so much of what Jennifer shares about her experiences, especially wanting and trying so desperately hard to do the right, to make people happy, to please, and still somehow failing and always being misinterpreted of what my true intentions were. As she said, scared looks a lot like mad. Shy can look a lot like stuck up. And impatient and overwhelmed also look so much alike. They're two sides of the same coin. And she encourages us to reframe our initial negative interpretations of other people. Give people the benefit of the doubt because you can never know what they might be going through. And it's true that those who are often the gruffest and meanest are doing so to protect themselves. And it's really a cry to be seen. Persevere beyond that roughness and truly be a friend to those who need it. Like Jenny, I was very naive and thought that if I could just do well enough and show how smart I was, that I too could earn my peers' respect and admiration. She says, I was naive. I was different, and I came off as pretentious and arrogant. I know. That's not because I was either pretentious or arrogant. It's just the smarts were how I garnered praise. And my ability to imagine another's perspective was so off that I thought if I tried hard enough and did well enough at everything, kids might like me for the same reason grown-ups did. After all, parents and teachers frequently asked others to be more like Jenny, right in front of me. Mind blind as I was, I truly thought that by constantly displaying how smart I was, starring in school shows, and making competitive level athletic teams, I would earn my peers' respect and friendship too. Didn't quite work out that way. I certainly didn't win any praise for correcting other kids or showing off how smart I was. The thing is, I wasn't trying to brag or be arrogant. I would hang out with anyone, but I am sure so many people have perceived me as that without my even knowing. And now that I'm aware of that, I try to think about how I could come off and not be so intimidating and arrogantly and perceived as arrogant. And the things that guys on the spectrum can get away with are often not things that girls get away with. In chapter 4, Jennifer speaks a lot to this frustration. For example, talking about Einstein, who said, "If a cluttered desk is a sign of a cluttered mind, then what are we to think of an empty desk?" Of course, nobody was about to evaluate Einstein based on his tidiness. There was something oddly enchanting about a playful genius with unkempt hair and a violin, a certain charm to the eccentricity, an appreciation that different kinds of rules apply to such different kinds of minds. One had to wonder, really, was this really a mess? Or was this a different sort of mind more interested in getting messy? In eschewing the mundane, and instead of diving headfirst into a tumult of possibilities and ideas. In researching the term absent-minded professor, I discovered a pattern so blaring that I honestly can't believe I never saw it before. Without exception, the realm of the adorably discombobulated is populated entirely by men. In history, literature, film, academia, science, in the basic overall zeitgeist of it all, just men. I can't help but notice the irony. Hans Asperger described the boys he studied, the ones by which autism was defined, as little professors, the exact same words used by my teachers and my daughter's teachers to describe us. Though I am most certainly my father's daughter, no one has ever loved me for being brilliant and bumbling. In spite of it, yes, but for it, never. Women are expected to have it all together and keep everyone else together in their families. But we need to reframe our perspectives. Instead of seeing mess as something bad, what is the relationship between mess and genius? If my mind is full of ideas, then isn't that better than having no ideas at all, no creativity, and just a sterile, clean house? I hate having everything perfectly lined up, and these minimalist modern houses and buildings are just so cold and so uninviting. There's nothing to spark my imagination and creativity, inspire me. And I know where things are in my chaos. I mean, sometimes it does get a little overwhelming even for me, but we need to reframe the idea that all of these things are bad, especially in women. How can guys get away with it and us not? I remember once in a class I took, there was a guest speaker, and he committed so many social blunders, and everybody loved him and laughed. And I remember being so mad, knowing that if I did those things, I would be the one to get chastised for it. And that just, the double standards are so irritating. Jennifer also talks about the issue with functioning labels. The most common hit I get is the cringeworthy, "You're autistic? Well, you must be very high functioning." Sigh. I understand what they're trying to say. Really, I do. They mean to be kind. The implication is, I don't see many, if any, of the clearly debilitating characteristics I associate with autism when I talk to you. So good on you. You're not bad off. Only that's not a compliment at all. It's a comparison based on the premise that autistic is an insult, a stigma, or at least a bad thing, because the only reason someone thinks of me as high functioning is by holding me up to someone who is no more or less autistic just more obviously challenged and deciding that they are lower functioning. Really, it's no different than saying, oh, well, good for you. You're not too ugly. That gal over there, she's royally ugly. Lack of understanding tied up with a bow of condescension. This was the first explanation that I really understood of the issues with using functioning labels like high functioning and low functioning. Before, I knew people had issues in the community, but I didn't really understand it to myself. And sometimes I still struggle with it because I am different from someone who can't speak and needs 24/7 care for the rest of their lives. I find it hard to identify with them, but they too are autistic. But then, and there are days when I'm like, who did you lie to get a diagnosis? Other days, I'm like, yeah, there's a reason why you got it. And my functioning does fluctuate over time. So I don't really think that high functioning versus low functioning are helpful. Some people find high supports need versus low support needs more helpful. So everyone needs support to some level or other, neurotypical or autistic. And none of these labels should be used to deny people the support they need or put them into a box. And that leads me into the final point about the hardest thing of being autistic. It's wondering, always wondering, and never understanding, how can I be so smart and still feel so stupid? Therein lies the conundrum that has plagued my life. How on earth can I possibly be a mean trivia bowl contender with a super memory bank account that easily retrieves useless facts, lines from my high school plays, and the page on Shintoism in my 9th grade world culture class, yet repeatedly fail to bring out the garbage or return from a quick run to the store with 7 things I hadn't planned on buying and without the one thing I'd actually needed? How could one brain be so good at hard things and utterly hopeless at others? I know full well that I have disappointed friends, family, teachers, colleagues more times than I can count, made them angry, made myself sick, lost friends and even jobs because my innocent inconsistencies were too impossible to believe. Over the years, they've all felt, believed, or said that I was too smart to be so irresponsible, clueless, inept. And when you hear something often enough from enough people in enough places, you believe it. I certainly did. No matter how hard I've tried to dot each I and cross each T, I've so often managed to screw up the simple stuff with no better idea of how to prevent another disaster. Humiliated, hurt, and lonely, I felt caught in a hamster wheel, futilely running as hard as I could without actually making progress, defending my heart again, my character again, hopelessly explaining myself again, until even I became sick of my voice. Jennifer includes a checklist of behaviors and traits that are so common in autistic women that may go under the radar, but know that you're not alone. If you don't want to read the whole book, check out at least what she calls her checklist, a portrait of women, girls, and our unique autism style on page 40. She includes several pages of condensed traits, and throughout the book, she gives examples of how she herself has met these traits that she's also commonly observed in other women and girls on the spectrum. And the culmination of her book is, of the personal triumphs I've seen, none are quite as powerful as watching what happens when a spectrum girl discovers how on purpose she is, how much she matters, how powerful and joyful she can be. What an honor to witness the strides made by these women, the toxic relationships they've come to question, then end, the resources and real friends they've made, the professional and personal, one step at a time evolution of women who are learning to trust their voices, to believe in themselves. These are real people. In their stories and in mine, We offer a chorus of testimony to what can happen when identification is proactively gifted, to many more decades of authenticity and insightful encouragement. It is my life's celebration to watch every wonderful thing that comes after a diagnosis, understanding flourishing, questions asked and answered, solutions abounding, to hear hope come alive, to say, you are your own wondrous occasion. More than a 1 in a million kind of girl, you're a once-in-a-lifetime kind of person. And to hear in reply, as one precious 19-year-old put it as she lay on a half-lit stage, Jennifer, now I make sense, and I feel like anything is possible. Because it is. With love, knowledge, visibility, patience, and courage, anything is possible for every single woman on the human spectrum. This book is empowering to women everywhere, on the spectrum or not. And however they choose to show their femininity, whether traditionally girly or more tomboyish. And I totally get what she means. I have had the pleasure of informally mentoring other people on the autism spectrum, some who have not yet been diagnosed but are seeking a diagnosis, to see people that I know get the diagnosis and, like me, have that aha moment, help them to process through this and find their powerful voices. It is important to have a mentor from the inside who can show you the steps to take so that you don't make the same mistakes, fall into the same pitfalls that you fell into. It's such a beautiful thing, and I want to be that kind of person. My goal is to become a coach for autistic and ADHD people using my own experiences combined with my education and research to help them find solutions tailored to them that help them find their voice and live a healthy, authentic life rather than forcing them into a box that society says they should be. What has helped you find your power as an autistic woman? Share your stories down in the comments. I'd love to read them and celebrate your wins. I want this channel to be part of empowering other autistic and neurodivergent people to live their best lives. And thanks so much for watching. Please like and share if you found this video helpful. And if you're looking for more neurodiversity media content, then click here to watch my latest review. Don't forget to comment what you would like me to review next and subscribe so you don't miss out on my latest review.